Okay. City of New Haven Health and Human Services Committee, Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. In order to join us via Zoom, please use the URL code listed on the public notice, or for audio only, feel free to dial 301-715-8592 or 312-626-6799 and enter the webinar ID 952-4209-3918 with the special audio only passcode 054-25071. Board of Alders notice, City of New Haven, the Health and Human Services Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders, Legislative Matter 2021-0172, an order of the Board of Alders and the City of New Haven accepting the list of proposals and organizations applying for eligibility to receive donations under the State of Connecticut 2021 Neighborhood Assistance Act. Per the Honorable Darrell Brackeen Jr., Chair attests. Honorable Michael B. Smart, City Town Clerk. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 or 203-946-8582 prior to the meeting. I will read the order. The order of the Board of Alders, City of New Haven, accepting the list of proposals and organizations applying for the eligibility to receive donations under the State of Connecticut 2021 Neighborhood Assistance Act. Whereas the Livable City Initiative of the City of New Haven submitted a list of program proposals from nonprofit organizations. I'll repeat that. Submitted a list of program proposals from nonprofit organizations applying for the eligibility to receive donations under the State of Connecticut 2021 Neighborhood Assistance Act. And whereas in accordance to Chapter 228A of the General Statute of Connecticut, the list of proposals must be presented to the board prior to the submission of the State of Connecticut's Commissioner of Revenue Services for the eligibility and approval. And whereas all proposals have been inspected to ensure every question is specifically answered to provide the complete disclosure of information appropriate to meet the minimum expectations of the State of Connecticut, including but not limited to providing the tax-exempt copy of the 990, a project narrative, a description of the organization, if it is not a tax-exempt or municipal agency, and the program meets the required definition of a community program under the Connecticut General Assembly 12-630 Connecticut sequence and/or services at least 75% of people directly served by the population who are under 150% of the poverty level. Now, therefore, be it ordained that the City of New Haven is hereby authorized to submit the attached list and proposals to the State of Connecticut, which received a public hearing, which is tonight, by a committee of the Board of Alders of the City of New Haven, and to be presented before July 1st, 2021. And at this time, I will check in for attendance, members of the committee, starting with my vice chair, who is now gone in the back.
Alder Ron Hurt, Vice Chair, Ward 3.
Black and Hispanic Caucus President, Clyburn.
Alder Clyburn, Ward 20, part of Human Service Committee.
Alder Winter.
Alder Stephen Winter, Ward 21.
Alder Cupo.
Alder Ellen Cupo, Ward 8.
Alder Sabin.
Alder Eli Sabin, Ward 1.
And we are joined by our Majority Leader, Alder Richard Furlow, and our dear colleague, Alder Kimberly Edwards. At this time, I will just state that everyone, if you all can please be on mute so that we can hear the speaker speak. And now we will welcome Kathy Schroeder. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours. State your name and address for the record.
Kathy Schroeder, Deputy Director LCI 170 Borman Road, East Haven, Connecticut 06512. Good evening, and thank you for coming out today and doing this joint meeting in reference to our Neighborhood Assistance Act that we do annually. As I begin, it is not city funding. This is not something that we're approving funding for. This is not our money. It's not state money. It's state tax credit. These are donated funds. The proposals that have been submitted to LCI, we are the liaison between the state and the nonprofits. I look at their proposals to make sure that they're complete, that they're 990, and they only require the first page of the 990, not the complete 990. And they have their narrative, and that the program is servicing a low moderate income community. That is what I do. Once that happens, they get submitted to this. I put them on their Excel spreadsheet, and they're presented. The list is presented to you to authorize me to submit that list to the state of Connecticut. State of Connecticut is the administrator of the program. They will then approve each individual proposal. They will assign a amount of donations that they can receive based on the makeup of if there's more than one entity that has the same owner, they decide all of that. Each proposal asks for that they're going to seek certain dollar amounts in donations. Some don't ever get them, some do. So the list that you have that I submitted to Al Lucas in our memo is all of the entities that presented their proposals and what they wanted to use it for, and the tax credit. So it's $1 for $1 on energy efficiency. If I was to donate, or somebody was to donate for an energy efficiency upgrade of, let's just say I donate $5,000, I would get a $5,000 tax credit. So energy efficient gives them $1 for $1. Any other type of programs, not renovations, because most of them are energy efficiency, but if they're going to do shelter services or what is a couple other healthy meals programs, they would get 60 cents on the dollar if the corporation donates to that entity. So how it happens is this list plus all the proposals that were sent to me get submitted to the state of Connecticut by July 1st. Once they receive them, they then issue an approval letter for each and every one of the proposals that have been approved. Then they have to go seek donations from corporations. The corporations would submit a form called NAA02 to the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut reviews all of that, and then they accept their donation. The state approves the donation, and they get submitted a letter from the state of Connecticut. Once the fiscal year is complete, or when the programs are complete. Now, this is where you can have multi-year programs, but most programs will complete after 1 year. Then they would submit me. So this is where it gets a little confusing, even for me, because I think about it. So the 2021s that we're talking about today, I wouldn't look for a post-project or program review from them until 2023. Because don't forget, this doesn't end until the end of December of 2021. Their donations aren't received till 2022. So I wouldn't be looking for it until the fiscal year 2023 submissions for the 2023 NAA. That's when I would request them. It's only for people over 25,000 that have received 25,000 or more. And I get a list from the state at the end of the year on those entities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee? Alder Winter. You are on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for reminding me that I was on mute. You had mentioned the administration's role in the process. The statute does also, for the legislative body, use the word approval. And so I take it for you that doesn't play into what you do, but it does seem like there's a role for the local legislature to play in approving whatever list gets sent to the state. Is that correct?
You're approving the list of the entities based off of my review of their proposal and their program, that they satisfy the low income, they're servicing a community, the program's a community service. So if you look at 12-636, it basically, DRS approves or disapproves a proposal pursuant to the provisions of section 632. So if you look at 12-636, DRS is the one that are actually approving them for the program, the entity, the program, everything. The city of New Haven does not. I'm submitting them, I'm telling the set date, basically, they're complete. And yes, the program services the community.
But it does say after approval by the legislative body of such municipality, which to me, if we were just transmitting it, it could say transmitted or sent, but it does say approval, that there's a role in looking at that list. And I think, granted that this is a neighborhood program, that the local legislature would have a say in whether or not something was going to be serving the interests of their neighborhoods. You'd also mentioned the audits. So I understand what you're saying, that we haven't received audits for funding if it's a multi-year project for the last year, but do we have a record of audits that have been received for projects over $25,000 for, say, something that was a 2018, 2019 project?
Yes,
That
it's
would be
attached
complete
to
now?
your, it's attached to the human resources memo that I sent to Al Lucas. All the 2019 post-project reviews are on there. They're not audits. The audit statute was repealed in 2012. So it's just a post-project review that's submitted.
I think the language we were looking at still included audits for entities receiving donations over $25,000.
It's called post-project review, not technically an audit. The audit section was repealed again in 2012. I have a copy of that. It's in section 12-673 was repealed in 2012, the audit section.
Yeah, I was looking at a different section.
Probably the post-project review section.
Okay. So yeah, it says post-project audit required, municipal agency certification required.
I will not certify to somebody else's expenditures. I've never done that in the 13 years I've been doing this. The entities certify and their accountants certify upon completion of their program. If it's a multi-year program, that certification from an accountant doesn't come until the program is completed.
Okay, but we do have these post-project audit reports.
Yes,
Is that we do?
it's
Okay.
attached to your, the 8s and 19s are attached to your human resources memo, the human services committee memo I sent through Al.
Mr. Chair, I don't think I received those through you. If we could have them sent over from Al or from LCI.
Duly noted.
And then the last question, then I'll yield to colleagues. With regard to the ownership question of entities that are owned by a single entity, you said the city does not play a role in
We do
And
not
looking at
enroll
whether,
in the maximum credit allowable. That's done by the state. If you look at 12-636, it specifically states that. I don't get involved with the maximum allowable credit.
okay. And are you aware of any instances where the state, there's like a cap of $5 million in credits that can be dispersed statewide? Has that ever been hit where there's actually a shortage of credits?
I've never been informed of that by the state of Connecticut. We submit our proposals and they determine all of the the maximum allowable credits.
Okay, thank you.
I can say, to my knowledge, none of them have been reduced on what they've requested in donations. So I've never heard of somebody getting their request reduced. But again, it's all about who donates and if they even get donations.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
You're
Mr. Chair.
Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none. Thank you. All right, we will now, for the record, I see we have our LCI director. If you can just state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Arlevia Samuel, 95 Anthony Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Did you have anything to add or?
No, Kathy, she's got it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yep. All right. Okay, we will move on. We will keep you all here on the screen just for reference later, but we'll ask everybody to please be on mute. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Are there any other members of the public wishing to submit testimony on this item? Just want to verify one last time. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, the chair will entertain any additional questions from members of the committee at this time. Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up on this post-project audit question because I see that 637 was repealed, but that there is a 637A, which says that a post-project audit be prepared and submitted for certification to the municipal agency designated to oversee the implementation of such program. Would be LCI in this case, I believe. The required certification shall verify that such expenditures were made in accordance with the program. So that's what I was interested in, is if we have, it sounds like we have not been conducting those certifications, but we have been.
We have the post-project review reports that are certified by the organizations. The expenditures that they are disclosing in those post-project reviews are certified by their organizations and an accountant. I do not personally, and on behalf of the city, will not be certifying as to expenditures that I did not make personally by myself. On behalf of the city, I would not do that ever. And I haven't done it in 13 years. So I send up the post-project reviews to the state with the organizations that's responsible for the implementation of the program, plus their accountant, if they completed the program that year. If it's a multi-year program, the accountant doesn't certify just the organization. So Steve, I will send you the attachment that I had sent to Al Lucas, and so that you could see what I'm talking about. But no, the municipal, I will not certify, and I wouldn't put the city of New Haven in that position either, unless I did a full-blown audit of their accounting for each organization. And again, the city does not get any fees for what we do on behalf of the state. It's not required that I do an audit. So I will not certify personally and or on behalf of the city as to
Okay.
what those.
Thank you. So you're saying that the certification is required, but it's required of the organization rather than of the city.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And again, if they want me to certify to something like that, I would have to get corp counsel involved in that, the state, because if they've repealed the audit section where I have the right to go and audit, then I would never certify to that. If I'm not the one doing the payments, or I would not do that. And I wouldn't put the city involved in that either.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions from members of this committee? I will again ask if there are any members of the public wishing to testify on this item. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify on this item? And I'd also like to state for the record that there was public notice given within the legal time frame, publicly noted on all publications and platforms given to members of the public. This is an annual item that members of the public are always invited to testify and send in testimony, even after this hearing, at public testimony at newhavenct.gov. Feel free to send an email. Public testimony at newhavenct.gov. And one last time, are there any members of the public wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, are there any follow-up questions from members of the committee? The chair will now entertain a motion to close the public portion of this hearing.
I don't know. I'm sorry, Alder Brackeen.
Yes.
Because of the lateness of this item being heard, is it possible to request to be directly, and I might say this wrong, and I apologize, but be sent direct to the board for a vote? I'm not sure if I said that right.
You are, look, Kathy, you're always on point. So I will take that under noted, and we'll have that discussion. We'll close the public portion and have that discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair will now entertain a motion to close the public portion of this hearing.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we close the public portion of this hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? We've now closed the public portion of this hearing. Only members of the committee are able to speak at this time. To Kathy's note, that is exactly what we intend to do on tonight. It is the power as a chairman of this committee that in order to be even compliant with state statute and our statutory obligation, that I discharge this item to the full board. It'll now be at the discretion of all 30 members of this board to address this item. We have held a public hearing, which was publicly noted, and also given an opportunity for folks to submit testimony, public testimony in newhavenct.gov to the point in which the full board will address this item. While we're discharging this item, I would like to give members an opportunity for discussion and discussion only. Any points of discussion? from members of the committee? Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I would just note that I think I differ from the testimony of the administration and the role that our body can play in modifying the list or removing some entity from approval. In reading the statute, I think that, we are part of this process because we have a sense for the pulse in our neighborhood and what will serve the neighborhood and which organizations will be making use of funds, in a similar manner that we do to the community development block grant budgeting process. And I think that's why there's a role there in the approval piece. And, I think that there are questions that, around the audit process, like my reading of the audit process is different than the reading that we heard tonight, in that I read it as saying that the city has a role in that process as well. But I do think, I do think with regard to whether there's any impropriety in how funds are being spent, that those overarching objectives serving the neighborhood can factor into our approval or disapproval of an item on the list. I also think there are large unanswered questions around the issue of having multiple entities owned by a single or controlled by a single entity, and what the threshold for that is and who determines it. We've heard tonight that the city is not involved in that. But if there are questions around that and it's the state who is making that determination, then I think that's a really important contingency for us as a board to consider, since that's explicitly noted as one of the criteria in the statute. So I think those are really important. And then I think on the audit reports that the city has received, I do think it'd be very beneficial for us to be looking at how funds have been spent historically and whether or not they're being used for the purposes that the applicant stated in their application. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments from members of the committee? I've already stated what action we'll be taking, so I just want to be very clear. The following statement I'm about to give, it is of my personal volition and not as the chair. We've already taken action on the item. I just want to add that it appears to me that this state statute is very poorly written. We are our local officials. Kathy and LCI, they are local city administration. We can only follow the statute that is written. And one of the bigger questions that I am curious about moving forward is, will the state provide clear guidance to this body, this deliberative body? We do exercise vast power on local ordinances, but we cannot override state statute. And if that state statute is not clear and we're not giving direction as to what we as a legislative body are to do other than a public hearing, which is actually what it clearly says that this body is supposed to do, have a hearing. It's just not clear. It's poorly written. So moving forward, it will be the prerogative and the priority of this committee to seek state support and clarity. And let me be clear, members of the administration, including Kathy and others, have reached out to DRS on that information, Department of Revenue Services. We have asked for much more clearer guidance. And it is my opinion personally that we have not received an effective answer in order to address all of the questions that Alder Winter has. We only have what is written. And what we have is poorly written. We also have repeals that have been in place, and clearly the website has not been updated. So we have an additional question. Was it repealed or not? Right? We have more questions than we do answers. We are a deliberative working body. We are thoughtful individuals. We all come from different walks of life. Executives, some of us, who deal with nonprofit work and grant for over a decade personally. We asked the right questions. We sought solutions, and the state has not provided the correct and clear answers. So I'm calling on the state to give us clear guidance. There's over 160 or 70, 169 municipalities in the state. I'm not sure how many involved in this process, but from my understanding, many of whom also follow the state statute. And they clearly see that it's only asked for us as a deliberative body to have a public hearing. There is no clarity. What is the policy? So to the list of questions that Alder Winter have raised, those are my personal questions that I have to the state. And it's only the state that can resolve those issues. So being that there was no discussion, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, it was moved and I will accept that as a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposition? I hope not. Abstentions? Good night.